Hey everyone, welcome to Small Screen Sagas. I'm your host Nicole, and today I'll be discussing the TV show from Season 1, Episode 1, Long Day's Journey into the Night. As I mentioned in the intro podcast, if you listen to that, Season 1, I'll probably do shorter episodes or shorter recaps. That way we can hurry up and catch up to Season 2 and then do further, deeper dives into the Season 2 episodes. It comes on, you see a man ringing a bell in the middle of a street. The town looks old. Everything is kind of old and crusty and rusty. And no one really looks happy. And that's all you know so far. So let's get into some of the characters that we meet this first episode. The major one is probably going to be Sheriff Boyd, played by Harold Pierna, or Harold P. I'll just say Harold P. because I don't want to pronounce his name wrong. He played Michael from Lost. So he's the sort of the sheriff in the town. He's leading sheriff/mayor because he sort of is in charge. On the other side of the town, sort of outside the town, up on the hill, we have the Colony House. Big old house. A lot of people live there. Kind of looks like the fun house. Like they're kind of hippies. Everyone's having fun. They're all living together. And they do not connect with each other. So even though they're all still in that same town, the town people stay in the town, the Colony House people stay in the Colony House, and over in the Colony House, we have Donna, who's in charge over there. We meet Donna, we meet Sheriff Boyd. Later on throughout the episode, you do see them interact, and Donna says, hey, you're not supposed to come over here. So that's kind of getting further into the episode. So we do know that these two communities, they coexist, but they do not interact with each other. Another group of characters we meet is the RV family. We have Jim, we have Tabitha, we have Julie, and we have a little boy named Ethan. So we meet them, they're driving, they're on a family trip, and after a while they realize, hey, we're lost. They see the tree will come up later. Let's not worry about that right now. The tree will come up later. They see a tree in the road, and they have to look for a different way to move on. And then they start just driving through the town, and they're not able to get out. And Tabitha's getting frustrated because she's like, how are we keep missing the exit? And Jim is like, we're not missing an exit. There is no exit. I'm driving straight. I'm driving as slow as I possibly can. I don't know how we keep going in circles. So they do realize something weird is going on. They're just not quite sure. And before they can kind of get further into it or start arguing, because you can tell there's some animosity or some tension there between Tabitha and Jim, the husband and wife, they end up crashing into another car. Long story short, Boyd comes out, everyone comes out to help them, and they say, hey, it's going to be safer for you and your family if the wife and daughter go into town and let them be safe inside, and then we will help your son, Ethan, who has a stick in his leg. We need to take care of him inside the RV overnight. And still, we're not quite sure at this time what's going on, although I did kind of skip an important part, which is at the beginning of the episode. We do see a little girl, her mom, and they're inside the house. They're waiting on the dad to come home, who's drunk at the bar, and he doesn't. And while the mom's getting everything ready in the house for the evening, she's closing the doors, locking, making sure the curtains are closed. We see the little girl, Megan, get a knock on her window, and what appears to be an elderly lady says, hey, I'm your grandma, open up. And before Megan's mom can stop her, that elderly grandma turns into a monster. So that's our first clue that something's going on. So when Boyd, later on in the episode, Boyd is telling Jim and his family, hey, we need to get indoors. It's not safe out at night. We have some idea what he means because we did just see this elderly grandma that looked like a human being that turned into a monster. But we're still not quite sure, like, why they have to go indoors. Why is this, like, kind of normal at this point for them to be living in a town? And it's like, oh, no, we have to go indoors because there's monsters. But that's pretty much where we are. At the same time, I don't know how I feel about how Boyd and his people, like, how they let things go. Because they let Jim and his family, like, just drive around for a while. They even give Jim instructions, like, directions. Like, just keep going. You'll find your exit. And then they put those the strips out. They were going to stop them and then tell them on their own time. So I don't know if that's the best way to handle it, but at the same time, how do you explain what's going on in this city to anyone and have them listen to you. Like, I'm just thinking, if I was in that situation, would I believe, like, what would take for me to believe? It would probably take for me to actually see it happening. And in that point, it's too late. I kind of want to disagree with how they handle it, but at the same time, I don't actually have a better idea of how they should handle it when a new person arrives in town, and how to explain their worst nightmare, that this is it. You're in your worst nightmare right now. So a few things I'll talk about, though, that are just big points, and then we'll move on to the next episode, or I'll hurry up and finish this up and we'll move on. A few things I want to note, because this is now my 4th time watching it, and each time I notice a few other things. Well, one, we see an abandoned ambulance, and we know that Christy is a doctor, or she's playing a doctor here. So she's either gone fully to medical school, or she's in medical school, but she does have some medical knowledge. And we can assume that that's how she ended up in the town, was by that ambulance that's abandoned. It looks very, very old at this point. We also see a sign that says 96 days without incident. So we do know that, okay, town's been roughly safe for 96 days, but we don't technically know what that means at this point either. We see everyone has this type of stone in their hand. At Mega's house, Lauren's house, they have a stone at the front door. It's hanging on the wall. She touches it. Later on, when Boyd tells Christy you can fix him up in the RV, he has the stone in his hand. So there's some significance with the stone. I hate to say more, because I rather just wait until I know it happens in the episode to identify what that significance is. I want to talk about Tabitha. I don't know how I feel about Tabitha, even now in season, watching the whole series so far, the whole show so far. But one thing I noticed in this episode again is, because I wasn't really paying attention at first times, like when Julie was playing around with her brother, sort of scaring her brother in the RV, and she's saying like, monsters will come and get you, and then her mom, or Tabitha, kind of turns it around and says to Ethan, well, hey, Norman, your toy Norman, is okay, because if monsters are the one that got him, monsters don't exist, meaning your toy is still alive. Tabitha sort of turning a negative into a positive is what I like. It was like sort of a parenting skill to make Ethan feel safe and say, hey, how could Norman be hurt if monsters don't exist? So something that doesn't exist can't actually hurt your friend. And then later on, she kind of uses that same, or she gives us she turns another negative into a positive. And I'll have to look through my notes at it. But I kind of like that about Tabitha. But then at the same time, it makes me think that she's the type of person that's going to be in denial. So we'll have to see where her character goes. The other thing that she turned a negative into a positive was when Julie said, hey, those crows, that means like death or whatever, that means murder. And then Tabitha goes, well, actually, I don't think those were crows. I think those were ravens. And ravens just means an unnecessary trouble or something. So once again, saying that's not that as bad as crows. Turning a negative into a positive. At the same time, is it because she's in denial? Were those really crows? If they were, then you're in denial by saying now they're ravens to make it seem like it's not as bad. All right, a few other characters we meet are Ellis and Fatima. Ellis is Boyd's son. He looks to be in his early 20s or very young adult. So early 20s, or he might be 18, 19, somewhere around there. He clearly does not fuck with his dad. Like, his dad comes to see him and he doesn't want to talk to him. He kind of ignores him. There's some animosity there. We don't know why. And we'll find out later through the series, though. A few other characters we meet through this episode is Sarah and her brother, Nathan. I can't tell, at this point, you can't tell what's going on with Sarah. She walks past the Boyd's car and she doesn't say anything. They try to talk to her. She sort of ignores them. And she seems like she's close with her brother. She's helping out in the medical unit where the other car that crashed. We see Tobey in the hospital. And at first, she seems overly nice to him. She's feeding him the water, having him drink the water, but sort of forced. But then later on, she just outright murders him, kills him, and says, this is not your fault. So now we're like, what? What the hell is wrong with this girl? Like, yeah, there's monsters, but now this girl just killed this random guy. And at this point, we don't know why. It's for no reason. So we know something's up with Sarah. So once again, we're getting more every time there's a question answered, there's like 3 other questions that pop up. And now we're wondering, why did Sarah just murder this guy? And then the episode pretty much ends with Boyd, Christy, Jim, and Ethan all in the RV. Boyd, you see him getting the RV safe. He's putting stuff up over the windows, trying to cover it up. And Jim does ask, like, hey, what are you doing? He says, keeping the RV safe. And before Boyd can explain more, they start hearing shrieks and sounds, because Jim goes, what do you mean by keeping it safe? And we hear shrieks and weird sounds that would freak anybody out. You wouldn't hear those sounds and say, let me look to see what that is. No, you would hear those sounds and probably cover and take cover as much as possible and be like, I don't want to mess with any of whatever that is. I don't want anything to do with it. So I think at this point, Jim does realize something's out there, but probably in his mind, he's probably thinking it's animals. Because why would your mind ever go to monsters? You're probably thinking like, oh shit, there's some big animals. There's some exotic, maybe I've never seen before animals that are out there and they're territorial and they come out at night to hunt. At least that's where my mind would go. It would never go to, those must be monsters out there. But the episode ends with those shrieks, and we do see what looks to appear to be humans in all different types of clothing. There's like someone that has like a nurse uniform on. Someone looks like they're in a wedding. They're just kind of walking in the dark towards the RV, towards Jim and Boyd in that RV. And clearly they're not human, because we already saw that elderly lady turn from a lady to a monster. So we know something's up with these people, especially if they're just out walking around like everything's normal when those shrieks just made that noise. So that's pretty much everything that happened in episode 1. We also did see that they left the strips down, so they're now running to the house. There's a group running to the house with Jim's wife and daughter, and that's where we left them off. And Kenny does tell them, hey, no matter what you hear, no matter what you see, do not stop running. And to me, that was almost the scariest line in the episode, because if someone told me, I would be freaked out. I would be so scared. I would want to look, and now I know I can't look. I'd be freaked out. So that's where we are. I'm going to leave it here. That's a recap of episode 1. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I would love to hear from you. If you want to send in audio or send in emails on what your thoughts are of the episodes, if you want to do each episode or you want to do a season as a whole, we can discuss your season as a whole at the end. If you want to send something in on a specific episode, we'll talk about it when we're covering that episode. So my email is host@theverdictsend.com. That's HOST@theverdictsend.com. I was already into it like immediately after episode 1. So I want to know what you guys are thinking. Or did you watch episode 1 and go, oh my gosh, I want to keep watching? Or were you like, this seems like something else? We'll continue on. I'm going to do these nice and quick so we can hurry up and catch up to season 2. Other than that, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.